Mitochondrial inheritance. Mitochondrial inheritance also does not follow the inheritance patterns discovered by Gregor Mendel. Both mitochondria and chloroplasts carry genes on chromosomes from ancient symbiotes, genes that are not in the nucleus. We will focus on the mitochondria and the mitochondrial DNA. Eukaryotic cells have DNA in two places, mitochondria as well as nuclei. Mitochondrial DNA is abbreviated as mtDNA. mtDNA typically has 37 genes, while the nucleus contains over 25,000 genes. Endosymbiosis theory, which you can see pictured in the images here, states that mitochondria are derived from a bacterial ancestor that was engulfed by an archaea ancestor. So here's our archaebacterial host or ancestor in our eubacterial symbionts. And the engulfing occurs. Okay. And this is our ancestor of our mitochondria. Nuclear chromosomes are derived from our archaea ancestor that engulfed the bacterial ancestor. Modern mitochondria produce most of the cell's ATP and are similar to bacteria. The inner membrane of mitochondria looks and behaves like prokaryotic plasma membranes. Mitochondria have small circular chromosomes with a small number of genes that are directly involved in cellular respiration. This enables them to rapidly provide energy when needed without waiting for instructions from the nuclear DNA. While mitochondria needs proteins from the cell to function, they replicate their own chromosome and divide on their own schedule. Mammalian cells typically have multiple mitochondria, and each mitochondrion has 2 to 10 copies of its chromosome. The division process looks like binary fission. They also fuse with each other. The higher the energy requirements of a cell, the more mitochondria it has. Muscle cells, for example, have a lot of mitochondria. Mitochondria in muscle cells. In almost every cell of your body, descendants of bacteria are replicating circular chromosomes and dividing on their own schedule. Not only is your body covered with bacteria, your cells harbor their modern descendants. You can see the color of the muscle change dependent upon the mitochondrial content. So this red muscle has high mitochondrial content. This is medium, so it's mixed, and then white is low. Non-nuclear inheritance. During the sexual reduction processes of mitosis and meiosis, the mitochondria and chloroplasts are randomly segregated into the gamete cells, resulting in unequal numbers. Traits determined by the mitochondrial DNA, mtDNA, and chloroplast DNA, cpDNA, do not follow simple Mendelian rules because of this imbalance. cpDNA encodes key thylakoid proteins for light-induced ATP production, as well as other key enzymes. mtDNA codes for critical proteins of the electron transport chain required for ATP production. In animals, most of the mitochondrial DNA is transmitted by the egg and not by sperm. As such, traits determined by the mitochondrial DNA are maternally inherited. Humans can trace their heritage back in a single line through their female ancestors through their mtDNA. In plants, mitochondria and chloroplasts are transmitted in the ovule and not in the pollen. As such, both mitochondria-determined and chloroplast-determined traits are maternally inherited. Unlike nuclear DNA, which is inherited from both parents, so inherited from all ancestors to produce offspring, mitochondrial DNA is inherited only from the mother, which you see highlighted here, for the most part. This enables a person to trace their lineage through specific female ancestors. Scientists take samples of cells from people all over the world. Then they determine the nucleotide sequence of their mtDNA and compare those sequences to one another. People who have similar ancestry have similar mtDNA sequences. Furthermore, there are certain human sequences that we all have and other species lack. It used to be thought that only maternal mtDNA is passed down. Paternal mtDNA is either excluded from entering the egg or they're destroyed right after fertilization. However, recent research has shown that a small percentage of mtDNA is passed down through males. It has also been postulated that parental mtDNA can lead to health problems. It is not totally understood yet why the male mtDNA doesn't survive through the fertilization process. mtDNA has a greater mutation rate than nuclear DNA because it has less efficient DNA repair, because mtDNA polymerase has poor proofreading and repair functions, as do all prokaryotic DNA polymerases. The mitochondria are filled with oxygen-free radicals, which cause more mutations, and it has more replications per cell division than nuclear DNA. mtDNA mutations. The genes encoded by mitochondrial DNA are all involved in ATP production, and ATP is needed by all cells to carry out metabolic reactions. Mutations in mitochondrial genes can lead to metabolic disorders that cause poor use of food energy and poor ATP production. So on the left, you see normal function. So this is fuel. On the right, you see what happens to this fuel if we have a metabolic disorder in a muscle cell. So in the normal case, if the mitochondrion is functioning properly, we get the production of ATP from this fuel in our muscle cell. If we have the metabolic disorder, then something is wrong with the ability for this mitochondrion to produce ATP, so we get a reduced amount of energy.